Hi, I'm CBC's Municipal Affairs reporter Justin McElroy. We're going to talk over the next 10-15 minutes about real estate numbers in British Columbia, new stats that came out today, how the unaffordability question that we've been talking about for years and years is continuing, and we're going to take your questions on the live stream to an economist who knows something about this and try and get some of those answers, or at least some sort of information in terms of where this is all going over the next few months in terms of numbers and what things are selling for. And, you look at the numbers that came out today and it's official. The good news is we've had 2 straight months in Greater Vancouver for the sales price of homes going down. The bad news means that the average sales price has gone all the way from $2.2 million to $2.1 million. So the information that we got today comes from the Greater Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver, as well as the Real Estate Board of the Fraser Valley, Vancouver Island, the Central Okanagan. Lots of places bring their numbers on a day like today. It happens once a month, and they talk about not only the sales prices, the median sales prices, but also the total number of homes posted for sale and the total number that actually were sold in the last month. So it's where we get all of our granular information that helps us understand where the market is going, what trend lines we're seeing, and that helps inform policymakers in terms of what decisions they try to make and how much we talk about just how good or bad things have been. And most people would probably say, at least on the affordability standpoint, things have been pretty bad. So what did we find out today? Let's take a look through some charts. First, this is the average sales price for Greater Vancouver properties from 2018 to 2023 on a month-by-month basis. Again, we got those new numbers today, and you can see top line for detached homes, we've had 2 straight months now of going down, $2.2 to $2.1 million for the Greater Vancouver area. And so that includes not only the city of Vancouver, but it includes Burnaby, it includes Coquitlam, it includes Richmond, the North Shore, a large area of places. So this number can be much higher in a place like West Van or the west side of the city. It can be a little bit lower for outlying areas, but even in Burnaby, we saw the median price for a home go over $2 million in this last month. You also see here for townhouses in the red, apartments for the gray, that it continues to be rising up a little bit over the past 6 months. Now you can see we had that downswing happen in 2022 as interest rates were jacked up. That had the effect of stopping some of the buying that was happening through COVID. You can see this big run up through 2020 and 2021. But that decrease that we saw for the first 3, 4, 5 months of 2022 has slackened. We're starting to see things not go down to those pre-COVID levels like we were hoping, or at least lots of folks were hoping when they wanted a reversal of what we saw in 2020 and 2021. And you can also see that when you look at the sale numbers as well. So let's take a look at our next chart here. We're looking at the rolling average of the total number of properties sold, detached homes, townhomes, and condos for all of the Greater Vancouver area. And again, you can see that big rise up from 2020, 2021, as interest rates were virtually zero. There was some buying in terms of what people were trying to do with their free time and to get more space. We then saw that sink for quite a number of months throughout 2022 in the rolling average, and we saw that decrease in prices that happened. Not by a lot, but it was actually going down. But over the past 2 months, you can see that little creep back up, and we're starting to see the total number of homes going back up again in terms of how many are selling compared to the previous year. So that softening of the market that we did see, at least over the last few months, has subsided. And it's not just in Greater Vancouver. If you look at the Fraser Valley, as we get one more chart up here, and we look at the average sales prices of Fraser Valley townhomes, so you're looking for, that quintessential starter home in the Lower Mainland area, some sort of townhome in Abbotsford or Chilliwack. And you can see throughout 2022, that average price more or less went down on a consistent basis. We went from $950,000 to $750,000. That's a pretty significant decrease at the end of the day. But over the past 6 months, it's been going back up, 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 up every single month, now back up to $859,000. So we've seen that the decrease that took place throughout 2022 has stopped. We've been seeing an increase over the last 6 months. And while the stats that we saw today saw that a little bit of a slowdown, at least compared to February, March, April, in terms of that increase, the numbers aren't going down. The affordability in Greater Vancouver is still out of reach for a heck of a lot of people, and there's not a heck of a lot of policy prescriptions on the table right now in terms of turning that around. So We've talked about housing affordability for years and years as a crisis, and for some of us, it gets a little bit, shall we say, normalized. There's only so long you can talk about it without being shocked. But new people are finding out about Vancouver's home prices and just how out of whack it is with local incomes all the time. And new audiences are finding ways to express their shock about it. Have a look at a TikTok video that got almost 1 million views over the past week. So again, we're live talking about everyone's favorite topic, real estate in Greater Vancouver, the affordability or lack thereof. Again, that video got almost 1 million views over the last week. People being shocked about just how much it costs to buy a home in this region of the world. And as we saw from those stats, it's not getting any better. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. We'll try and get to some of them a little bit later on. Now, we're talking only about the price of homes today because that's the numbers that we got from the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver. Rental numbers are a little bit trickier to get in terms of raw, accurate, quantitative data outside of once a year from the federal government. But we do know that over the past year and a half, out of the boom of the rise of purchasing properties, we saw a similar increase in terms of rental prices, it being a lagging indicator. And things have gotten so bad in the Vancouver area, and we just take this article up on the screen now, you can see that some financial analysts are saying that the 30% sort of guideline rule that we've been using for decades and decades in terms of what should be affordable for you and how much that you should put towards your rent should be scrapped. It's simply a reality of what the places are going for on the market. And that's not exactly a great thing. It's just what they are saying is what needs to be considered given what is out there, or more accurately, what isn't. To talk a little bit more about that, to talk about this month's numbers and to talk about where we're going, we're joined now by Bryan Yu. He is the Central One Credit Union's chief economist, looks at these numbers every month. And Bryan, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
So I guess the first question is, we saw that a little bit of an uptick in the benchmark price over the past month, a little bit of a decrease in terms of the average selling rate. But overall, that sort of slow trend line upwards over the past 6 months didn't really abate all that much in June. What's behind these factors?
Well, yeah, I think what we've seen just since the beginning of the year has been a significant rebound just in the terms of the number of sales flow. The demand in the market has still been there. Clearly, even last year, although there were very few sales occurring, we saw a lot of people sitting on the sidelines. So a lot of this demand has kind of come back into the market, adding to immigration numbers and really boosting the overall pricing environment through much of 2023, and affordability. It just got hit even worse as a result, even as with these rates being as high as they are.
I do want to say, because you wrote an article a few weeks ago in Business in Vancouver, and you said that because of the interest rate hike that we saw, we would see an impact and market momentum softening a little bit. We didn't really see that, as you said, in this month. Are you still expecting that in the months ahead?
Yeah, I am. I think when we look at the June numbers, the Bank of Canada hiked in early during the month. Markets were already pricing in some higher interest rates prior to that. But a lot of people have locked in rates, whether it's for a 3-month period. So I think some of these individuals were in fact just were purchasing based on those rates. And as we go forward, as those rates start to fall off in terms of those pre-approvals, we should start to see that momentum ease off again. We've seen the 5-year rates moving to 5% above over the last month, and that is going to put some brakes on this market. But I think, as you said, the overall pricing environment is still very firm at this point. Still a lot of buyers, even given the fact that rates are as high as they have been.
Well, and that's the thing, right? We've talked about home prices going from 2.2 million to 2.1 million. Is there anything really on the table that gets us back to 1.9, 1.8, 1.7, and similar downturns of 10, 15, 20% for the townhome and condo market? Or are we stuck in this environment for the foreseeable future because of that demand that's coming into British Columbia?
Well, yeah, I think that, in terms of the rates, that is clearly still slowing the overall trends in terms of, what people can afford. People have sat on the sidelines last year. At the same time, they are there's also the factors that the labor market has been very strong. People had quite a bit of savings during the pandemic as well, helping to propel this. And again, lots of immigration that is driving some of this demand. And when we look at where we've been, given the rates have been so high, and we're still seeing this demand flow through and propping up prices, I think it's very difficult to assess right now that we're going to be moving back to something of a pre-pandemic type of a level. We're well above that right now, and clearly, I think a lot of buyers have been adapting to these higher rates, and they're willing to make that plunge into home ownership at this point as well.
We're here with Bryan Yu, Central One's chief economist, talking about the new housing stats that came out today. If you have any questions, put them forward if you're watching on YouTube. And Bryan, I guess one thing we're seeing more from politicians, particularly at a regional and local level over the past couple months, is they've been saying, look, immigration numbers are going through the roof, even when you compare to pre-pandemic, and there's simply not the environment in place to get the amount of housing units in line to meet all those people who are coming here. Is that a real disconnect? Is that a big reason why this increase is happening and why these higher interest rates aren't really curbing the price of homes?
Yeah, there's a definitely disconnect between how much we're building versus how many people are incoming due to immigration. Clearly, we do need high levels of immigration just to meet the needs of our labor markets, to meet the needs of an aging population. But we're kind of in a scenario where we've kind of underbuilt the market for, I would say, a decade now. And what we need to do in order to facilitate even the existing shortages is build a lot more. And unfortunately, I think when we think about policy, a lot of it has been about trying to constrain demand in the market, whether it's more taxation, speculation taxes, and the like, in order to drive down that overall demand side. But ultimately, when we think about how many people are coming in and what we need in the future for overall homes, we're still well behind that. And any policy that we see now really need to be geared towards building more homes, using federal lands, provincial lands, trying to lower the cost of building as well in order to drive that. And in the short term, it's unlikely that we're going to make much headway on that. But it's really those are medium to longer term types of policies to build more.
But I guess people have been hearing in this market for years now that we have to build, build, build. And so we see these prices increase. I guess, what do you say to the sort of person that's exhausted of hearing this and not seeing a real turnaround? Is it a question of the government not doing enough? Is it a question of outside forces? Why should they be confident in that, given what they've heard over the last 5 or 6 years, and yet it not making an impact at this point?
Yeah, it's really challenging. I think that when we look at the housing market, it's clearly unaffordable for many individuals, for, I would say, the vast majority, especially younger individuals who don't have equity from purchases or previous homes in order to move around the market. And it's going to remain hard or difficult. When we look at what needs to be built in order to maintain affordability, it really has to be dense products. What we're seeing were multifamily products. Even what we've seen in the more recent numbers is that the numbers from June suggest that a lot of the sales cycle really moved during the month to the Fraser Valley. A lot more demand for potential apartment buildings as well as townhomes, things that are slightly more affordable. And again, that's going to be meaning that a lot of this product that people are going to be available to people is sort of on the suburban markets rather than core Vancouver.
And so, we said we got today the stats when it came to selling and buying real estate, and those numbers. We don't get the rental numbers in as clear a way as often. But I guess, Bryan, the question is, given what we've seen over the past 6 months of prices rising a little bit, can we expect the same thing in the rental market? Is there any relief there coming anytime soon?
Well, I think we've already seen a lot of the movements in the rental market. If we look at, whether it's just the CPI data that's lagging consumer price index data, that suggests around 6 to 7% increase year over year in rents. But I think this is much more when we think about the turnover rents or asking rents in the market. We've seen numbers that these are over 10% in terms of year over year increases versus what people were or landlords were looking to charge from last year. And when we think about what's driving the demand for this, it's going to be very tight. We know that we have vacancy rates that are around 1% in the Metro Vancouver. We know that individuals are coming in at a very strong pace, and for the most part, a lot of this is going into the rental market at the front end. It takes time for people to go into home ownership, as they either require to build a credit or build other requirements and down payments in order to get into the home ownership market. So this pressure is still likely to build into the rental market, and there is, of course, going to be some level of moderating factors. There is that income you can really largely grow at the kind of rate of incomes as well, and with the option of being, again, doubling up on in terms of getting more roommates, for example, in some of these for some of these rentals.
I mean, some people hear that and go, that's pretty grim if the advice is just get yourself another roommate, especially if you only have 500 square feet to begin with. Davis Kyle on YouTube asks, what would it take to get a 5 to 7% rental vacancy in the Greater Vancouver area in terms of construction, in terms of the number of new units that would need to come on board, and where are we now?
Well, yeah, I think obviously building a lot more rental product in the market. Do I have the exact number? Not right now. I think we haven't seen these 5% types of rates. Historically, we've kind of topped out in Metro Vancouver around 2.5–3% in past years, largely due to lower demand, partly due to COVID in some cases from the numbers. We do need to build a lot more, and there's, again, an undersupply in this market as well. So even if we build a substantial amount, a lot of that is going to be absorbed by existing demand as well. So really, part of it's a policy question. How do we build more rentals? How do we ensure that land costs are going to be low enough in order to have more rentals? And that's going to be a question of partnering, or number one, it's going to be an issue around building more social housing, building more affordable housing, or maybe income-geared housing, and also just working with, I think, private sector working with government in terms of lands that they can use for the purpose of building more rentals, potentially at a lower cost.
We got a question in from T that's pretty to the point. He says, so just wait for my parents' house or for them to die. And like lots of people, if you're not in the market and if you don't have that source of income, that is pretty much the strategy right now, for better or worse. So like, what do you say to people who go, you know what, for the past 7–8 years, it's been completely out of my place to even think about saving up for it. And what I'm hearing from you and what I'm hearing from policymakers doesn't give me any optimism that it's going to turn around.
No, I actually don't really think it's going to turn around. And as that question is, there is a significant number who are likely waiting on wealth and gains coming from intergenerational types of transfers. So really, that is one of the ways in which individuals are likely get into this market. And when we think about how do we build more for younger individuals, unfortunately, or I think what we're going to see here is that there will be some move, and unfortunately, there will be move to build more rentals in the market. But this is going to be much more of a renter type of a market as well going forward. We will expect to see a greater share of Metro Vancouver being a renter's market versus a home ownership market over the long haul.
But if it's a renter's market and it's still $2,500 for a 1-bedroom, what sort of person can afford that?
I think,
and I know you're not prime minister or premier, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very difficult. I don't think there's a clear answer of how do we ensure that we get more rental, except to, again, getting policymakers to push for the build more type of mentality, and really densify in terms of in a lot of different areas to allow greater density, allowing a cost per square foot of a rental, and also multifamily condos, to hopefully, again, to level that affordability issue over time. And so again, if we can build more, I do think that we are looking at a period where we could see some moderation, and possibly over the long haul, maybe some reduction in price per square foot over time. But again, there's a lot of those ifs of what the policymakers can do, and also how do we reduce the cost of building as well in order to facilitate that.
All right, Bryan, I really appreciate you taking the time, even if your expertise on this may not make exactly everyone optimistic about the future, but that's where we are at in this neck of the woods these days. Thanks again.
Thanks very much.
And thank you all for watching. This will be posted on our YouTube page for you to watch in the future, and you can get more coverage, as always, at cbc.ca/BC. Thanks again.